The boxing world is buzzing with controversy as promoter Samson Lukowicz delivers a bold statement, claiming that Canelo Alvarez will never be the biggest star in Mexico if he doesn't face David Benavidez. But the shocking part? Lukowicz also predicts that if Canelo does take the fight, he will get knocked out in devastating fashion. This statement has reignited the heated debate about whether Canelo is avoiding Benavidez or simply making smart career moves. Fans have long wanted to see these two warriors collide in the ring, but with Canelo's camp showing little interest, frustration continues to grow. Could this be a tactical move to protect Canelo's legacy? Or is it fear of Benavidez's relentless power? One thing is for sure, the pressure is mounting, and the world is waiting to see if Canelo will finally step up or continue to steer clear of the Mexican monster. As if the rivalry wasn't intense enough, Lukowicz's comments come just after Benavidez's brutal war with David Morrell, a fight that left the former super middleweight champion visibly battered. Despite winning the match, Benavidez took serious damage, including an 11th-round knockdown that had fans questioning whether he was as dominant as previously believed. If Benavidez struggled against Morrell, does he really have what it takes to dethrone Canelo? Or was this just a tough learning experience that will make him even more dangerous? Meanwhile, Canelo has already dismissed the idea of fighting Benavidez, claiming he doesn't like how he's been calling him out. But is this just an excuse to avoid a fight that could end in disaster for him? The stakes couldn't be higher, and with every passing day, the demand for this mega fight only grows stronger. Will Canelo take on the challenge, or will Benavidez have to carve his own path to greatness without ever getting his shot at the Mexican superstar? Promoter Samson Lukowicz has made a bold claim, stating that Canelo Alvarez will never be considered the biggest boxing star in Mexico if he does not fight David Benavidez before he retires. According to Lukowicz, the fight is necessary for Canelo to solidify his legacy, as Benavidez represents one of the toughest challenges in the sport today. However, he also contradicts himself by saying that if the fight does happen, Benavidez would knock Canelo out and that it won't be fun for the Mexican champion. This raises a crucial question. Why would Canelo willingly step into the ring with an opponent that many believe could defeat him, especially as he moves up in weight? Canelo has already shown signs of struggle in his recent performances against David Morrell and Alexander Gvozdyk, leading some to question if he would even consider taking on a younger, stronger, and more aggressive opponent like Benavidez. While fans are eager to see the matchup, the reality is that Canelo has always been strategic with his career moves, and taking a high-risk fight at this stage may not be in his best interest. While many view Benavidez as a major threat to Canelo, his recent fight against David Morrell exposed certain vulnerabilities. Benavidez, at 28 years old, was put through one of the toughest battles of his career, facing serious adversity inside the ring. Morrell, a former Cuban amateur star with a record of 11-1 and 9 knockouts, pushed Benavidez to his limits. In the 11th round, Benavidez was knocked down, an unusual sight for someone known for his durability and relentless fighting style. By the time the fight ended, Benavidez looked exhausted and battered, struggling to maintain the same level of confidence he usually carries. Many fans and boxing analysts took note of this, highlighting how the fight seemed to humble him. In post-fight interviews, he appeared less energetic and more reserved, as if the battle had taken something out of him. While he still walked away with the victory, the fight raised some doubts about whether he is truly ready to take on the biggest names in the sport. If Morrell was able to expose certain weaknesses, what would happen if Benavidez stepped into the ring with an elite fighter like Canelo? Despite the ongoing talks about a potential matchup, Canelo's camp has remained largely unbothered by the mind games being played by Benavidez's team. Lukowicz insists that Benavidez no longer needs Canelo to build his legacy, arguing that the younger fighter is already carving out his own path. However, at the same time, he continues to push the narrative that if Canelo does not face Benavidez, he will never be remembered as Mexico's greatest boxing star. This appears to be another attempt to pressure Canelo into accepting the fight, a tactic that both Benavidez and his team have been using for years. However, Canelo has made it clear that he is not interested in being manipulated or guilt-tripped into any matchups. He has previously stated that he does not appreciate the way Benavidez and his team have been calling him out, which only makes the fight seem even less likely to happen. Instead of responding to these provocations, Canelo continues to focus on his own career. choosing fights that align with his personal goals rather than those dictated by outside pressure. With Canelo seemingly uninterested in the fight, Benavidez now faces the challenge of proving that he can dominate in the light heavyweight division without needing Alvarez's name on his record. His performance against Morel raised concerns about whether he is truly capable of maintaining his dominance at 175 pounds, where the level of competition is significantly higher. Fighters like Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol have established themselves as the best in the division, and if Benavidez wants to earn their respect, he will have to show that he can consistently perform at an elite level. Lukacs believes that Canelo will retire within the next year, leaving Benavidez as the future face of Mexican boxing. However, the reality is that Benavidez still has a long way to go before he can claim that status. With upcoming title fights in the division and the need to refine his skills further, he must focus on cementing his reputation rather than waiting for a potential fight with Canelo. If he fails to prove himself against the top light heavyweights, he risks losing the momentum he has built, while Canelo continues to solidify his legacy on his own terms. Sampson Lukacs's statements also highlight the ongoing tension between Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez's camp. For years, Benavidez has been chasing a fight with Canelo, but the Mexican superstar has repeatedly dismissed the idea. While some fans argue that Canelo is avoiding Benavidez, others believe that he has earned the right to choose his opponents carefully. After all, Canelo has fought and defeated some of the biggest names in boxing, moving up and down in weight classes to prove his greatness. From Gennady Golovkin to Sergey Kovalev and Caleb Plant, Canelo has consistently taken on tough challenges. His team has been clear that they are not interested in being pressured into fights that don't align with their long-term strategy. If Canelo decides to retire without ever facing Benavidez, his legacy is still cemented as one of the greatest Mexican fighters in history. Meanwhile, Benavidez will need to move forward and find ways to define his own career outside of a Canelo fight. Another important factor to consider is whether the financial side of the fight makes sense for both fighters. While Benavidez is undoubtedly a rising star, he does not yet have the same level of global recognition as Canelo. A fight between them would be a massive event, but would it generate enough revenue to convince Canelo to take the risk? Canelo has already participated in some of the highest-grossing boxing events of the past decade, and he is selective about which fights make the most business sense. His bouts against Floyd Mayweather, Golovkin, and Dmitry Bivol were all financially lucrative, bringing in millions of pay-per-view buys and massive gate sales. If a fight with Benavidez does not guarantee similar financial rewards, Canelo may not see the point in taking on such a dangerous opponent. On the other hand, Benavidez knows that a fight with Canelo would be the biggest payday of his career, which is why he and his team continue to push for it. The more they pressure Canelo, the more it becomes clear that they see this as their best opportunity to make history and secure generational wealth. Regardless of whether the fight happens, one thing is certain: David Benavidez must focus on his next move carefully. His recent victory over Morel was a tough battle that exposed some of his weaknesses, and if he wants to continue climbing the ranks at light heavyweight, he needs to refine his skills. There are plenty of dangerous opponents in the division, and if he underestimates them while waiting for Canelo, he could suffer a career setback. Fighters like Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol are considered the best at 175 pounds, and facing them would be just as much of a legacy-defining fight as a match against Canelo. If Benavidez truly wants to prove he belongs among the greats, he should shift his focus toward becoming an undisputed champion in his new weight class rather than waiting for a fight that may never happen. His path to greatness is still in his control, but he must make the right decisions moving forward. Ultimately, the conversation surrounding a potential Canelo-Benavidez fight will continue as long as both men remain active in the sport. Fans and analysts will debate whether Canelo is avoiding Benavidez or simply making smart business decisions. At the same time, Benavidez must prove that he is capable of building his own legacy without relying on a fight with Canelo to define him. If he can continue winning and dominating top-tier opponents, the fight may eventually become unavoidable. But for now, Canelo remains in control of his career, and unless he sees a compelling reason to take on Benavidez, he will continue to move forward on his own terms. Meanwhile, Benavidez must stay focused and take on the biggest challenges available to him in the light heavyweight division. If he succeeds, he will carve out his own place in boxing history, whether or not he ever shares the ring with Canelo Alvarez.